The Dominion had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. Their empire was so large that most species could not even imagine its size. 300 star systems belonged to them. Thousands of planets paid tribute to their high council. In all that time, no one had ever said no to them. No one had ever fought back. They had forgotten what it felt like to face an enemy who was not afraid. High Commander stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Sovereign. The ship was massive, nearly 3 miles long, covered in weapons and shields that could destroy entire cities. Around him, his crew worked in perfect silence. They had done this many times before. They had conquered dozens of species. This would be no different. On the viewing screen, a small blue planet floated in the darkness of space. It was a pretty world, covered in oceans and green land. It orbited a yellow star that the locals called the Sun. The planet was called Earth, and its people called themselves humans. "Tell me about these creatures," said to his intelligence officer. The officer pulled up data on his screen. "They are a young species, High Commander. They achieved faster than light travel only 30 years ago. They have explored perhaps a dozen star systems. Their military is small. We have counted only 40 warships in their entire fleet." Made a clicking sound with his mandibles. It was the way of laughing. 40 ships. We have 2,000 in this fleet alone. "Yes, High Commander. Their technology is primitive compared to ours. Their weapons could not penetrate our shields. Their ships are slow and poorly armored. By every measure, they are no threat to us. And yet they refused our terms." The officer hesitated. "They did, High Commander. We sent the standard ultimatum: surrender unconditionally or face destruction. We explained that their planet would become a mining colony and their people would serve the Dominion as workers." What was their response? Their ambassador was a female named Bishop. She received our message in front of their World Council. She read it aloud. And then, the officer paused, clearly uncomfortable. "Then what?" "She laughed, High Commander. She laughed for a long time. Then she said that we could take our ultimatum and put it somewhere that I do not fully understand but believe to be an insult. Then she ended the transmission." The bridge went silent. No species had ever responded this way. Most begged for mercy. Some tried to negotiate. A few simply went quiet as the reality of their situation crushed their spirits, but no one had ever laughed. Felt something he had not experienced in centuries. He was not sure what to call it. Later, he would learn that humans called it unease. "They are fools," he said finally. "Prepare the fleet. We attack in 72 hours. On Earth, the mood was very different. Admiral stood in the war room, 300 feet beneath the Rocky Mountains. The room was filled with screens showing data, maps, and most importantly, the alien fleet. 2,000 warships, each one larger and more powerful than anything humanity had ever built. Around the table sat the most important military leaders from every nation on Earth. For the first time in human history, there were no enemies in this room. The old conflicts between nations seemed very small now. "They gave us 72 hours, said. His voice was calm. He had been a soldier for 40 years. He had learned long ago that panic helped no one. "They want us to surrender. They want our planet and our people." General Li Wei from China spoke first. "Our combined forces cannot match their fleet. Even if every nation committed everything we have, we would be outnumbered 50 to 1. "The numbers are worse than that," said Commander Lisa Turner, who had spent the last week studying every scan of the alien ships. "Their shields can absorb our heaviest weapons. Their armor is made of materials we do not even have names for. One of their ships could probably destroy our entire fleet alone." "So we surrender?" asked Admiral from Russia. His voice was bitter. "No," said firmly, "we fight." The room erupted in confused voices. How could they fight? With what? Against those odds? Raised his hand for silence. "I did not say we would win. I said we would fight. There is a difference." He looked around the table at the men and women who would decide humanity's fate. They have conquered hundreds of species. Do you know why they always win? No one answered. Because no one ever fights back. Every species they encounter looks at the odds, sees that victory is impossible and gives up. They surrender, they submit, they become slaves. Leaned forward. But we are not like other species. We have been fighting each other for 10,000 years. War is not something we fear. War is something we understand. Dr. Samuel Perry, the chief science advisor, pulled up historical data on his screen. The Admiral is right. Human history is defined by conflict, and more importantly, by adaptation. Every war we have ever fought has taught us something. We have developed strategies, tactics, and technologies specifically designed to overcome superior enemies. Commander Turner nodded slowly. I have been studying their fleet composition. They build their ships for overwhelming force. They expect to win through sheer numbers and firepower. They have no experience fighting an enemy who uses unconventional tactics. What are you suggesting? Asked General from Taiwan. Turner looked at, who nodded for her to continue. Guerrilla warfare, she said. Ambushes, traps, suicide attacks. We cannot beat them in a straight fight, but we do not have to. We just have to hurt them. We have to make them bleed. We have to make this invasion so costly that they question whether it was worth it. Took over. In the next 72 hours, we are going to build a fleet. Every civilian ship, every mining rig, every cargo hauler that can carry a weapon will be armed. We are going to hide weapons platforms throughout the solar system. We are going to prepare our cities for evacuation and our countryside for resistance. He looked at each face around the table. Chinese, Russian, American, European, African, South American. Old enemies who were now allies. We may not survive this. Our species may be destroyed or enslaved. But we are going to make them understand something that they have never had to learn before. His voice hardened. We are going to teach them what it means to fight humans. We are going to show them that some species do not break. Some species would rather die on their feet than live on their knees. General smiled grimly. In Russia, we have a saying, if you corner a wolf, you had better be ready for its teeth. In America, replied, we have a similar saying, do not tread on me. Around the table, leaders from every nation began to nod. They were afraid. They knew the odds, but they also knew their history. They knew what humans were capable of when their survival was threatened. The 72 hours began, and Earth started preparing for war. The invasion began exactly on schedule. High Commander was a professional. He did not believe in delays or mercy. When the 72 hours ended, his fleet moved toward Earth like a wave of metal death. 2,000 warships advanced in perfect formation. Their shields glowed with power, their weapons charged and ready. Behind them came the transport ships, carrying 500,000 soldiers who would occupy the planet. Everything was planned. Everything was organized. They had done this many times before. But as they approached Earth, something strange happened. The planet went dark. Every satellite stopped transmitting. Every communication signal vanished. Every electromagnetic signature that they had been tracking simply disappeared. Earth became a silent, dark sphere floating in space. What is happening? Demanded. His sensor officer looked confused. I do not know, High Commander. They have shut down everything. We cannot detect any technology, any power sources, any signs of civilization. That is impossible. 8 billion people live on that planet. They cannot simply disappear. They have not disappeared, High Commander. They are just hiding. Felt that strange feeling again, that unease. He pushed it aside. Continue the advance. They are trying to confuse us. It will not work. But deep beneath Earth's surface, humanity was not confused at all. They were preparing. In 72 hours, the human race had accomplished something that should have taken years. Every nation had set aside old hatreds and worked together. Russian engineers shared secrets with American scientists. Chinese factories produced parts designed by German engineers. Indian programmers wrote code while Brazilian miners dug tunnels. The entire planet became a single machine focused on one goal: survival. Commander Lisa Turner had volunteered for the most dangerous mission. She commanded the orbital defense platform hidden in the asteroid belt, far from Earth. Her crew was 300 men and women who knew they would probably die. She stood on the bridge of her station, watching the alien fleet approach on her screens. They were still hours away from Earth, still confident, still unaware. "All stations report ready," her second officer, a young man named Jack Porter, told her. Turner nodded. "Remember the plan. We are not trying to defeat them. We are trying to hurt them. Every ship we destroy is one less ship that can threaten our families. Every hour we delay them is another hour for the ground defenses to prepare." She opened a channel to her entire crew. "This is Commander Turner. In a few hours we will fire the first shots of humanity's first interstellar war. The odds are against us. Many of us will not survive, but our children will know that we stood up. They will know that we fought, and they will be proud." She paused, looking at the enemy fleet on her screen. "Make them remember this day. Make them tell stories about what humans did here. Make them afraid." The crew cheered. When the fleet entered weapons range, they expected no resistance. They were wrong. Hidden platforms opened fire from a dozen asteroids. The electromagnetic weapons launched chunks of metal at incredible speeds. The projectiles had no guidance systems to detect, no engine signatures to track. They were just rocks moving very fast. The first volley caught them completely by surprise. Shields that could stop energy weapons struggled against kinetic impacts. 3 ships exploded before they even knew they were under attack. Then the missiles came. Nuclear weapons that had been launched days ago, drifting silently through space with no power signatures, suddenly activated their engines. Hundreds of them streaked toward the alien fleet from every direction. Watched in shock as explosions blossomed across his formation. "Where did those come from? We scanned this entire system." "They were powered down, High Commander. We could not detect them." "Return fire, destroy those platforms." The ships began to respond, but now humanity's main fleet appeared. The 40 warships that intelligence had counted emerged from behind Jupiter's moons, but they were not alone. Behind them came 300 more ships. They were ugly vessels, cargo haulers with missile pods welded to their hulls, mining rigs with mounted on their frames, passenger liners converted into weapon platforms. They were not real warships. They were just whatever humanity could build in 72 hours. But there were a lot of them. "Impossible," whispered. "Where did they get those ships?" His advisor checked the scans twice before answering. "They built them, High Commander. They built an entire fleet in 3 days." The battle was brutal. Human ships died by the dozens. Their armor was weak, their shields almost useless, but they kept coming. When missiles ran out, they switched too. When ran out, they rammed enemy ships directly. Commander Turner watched her station take hit after hit. Fires burned in 3 sections. A quarter of her crew was dead, but her weapons were still firing. "Target that command ship," she ordered, pointing at a cruiser. "Everything we have left." The stations remaining turned and fired together. The cruiser's shields flickered and failed. The ship broke apart in a spectacular explosion. Turner smiled even as another hit shook her station. That is how humans fight. Her station lasted another hour before the damage became too severe. As the power failed, Turner ordered the evacuation. Most of her crew made it to escape pods. She stayed behind to trigger the self-destruct. Her final transmission reached Earth just before the station exploded. "This is Commander Turner. We took 47 of them with us. Give them hell." By the time the fleet reached Earth orbit, they had lost 400 ships. 400. more than any enemy had destroyed in the entire history of the Dominion, and they had not even landed yet. Stared at the casualty reports in disbelief. His fleet was still massive. He still had 1,600 ships, but his confidence was shaken. These humans were not behaving like conquered species were supposed to behave. "High Commander," his advisor said carefully, "perhaps we should request reinforcements before attempting the ground assault." No, his pride would not allow retreat. "We proceed as planned. These creatures got lucky. They surprised us. It will not happen again. Once we land our troops, we will crush them." He gave the order for the invasion to begin. Below, on the dark surface of Earth, 8 billion humans waited in tunnels and bunkers. They had watched the battle in space. They had seen their defenders die buying them time. They had heard Commander Turner's final words. Now it was their turn. Admiral stood in his command bunker, surrounded by screens showing the alien transports descending toward the surface. "All units, this is command. They are coming. Remember your training. Remember why we fight." He took a deep breath. "Welcome them to Earth." The landing forces expected a broken population waiting to surrender. They had done this many times before. They would land, show their strength, and the native species would accept their fate. Simple, clean, easy. What they found on Earth was something completely different. The first transport ships landed near what used to be major cities: New York, London, Beijing, Moscow, Tokyo. The soldiers marched out in perfect formation, their armor gleaming, their weapons ready. They expected to see crowds of terrified humans ready to be processed as slaves. Instead, they found empty streets. Every city had been evacuated. Every building was dark and silent. The humans were gone, but they had left presents behind. The first explosion killed 50 soldiers instantly. A building they were passing had been packed with explosives and scrap metal. The blast tore through their formation like a giant fist. Before they could react, gunfire erupted from a dozen hidden positions. Human fighters appeared in windows, on rooftops, in sewer openings. They fired their weapons, threw grenades, and then disappeared back into the shadows before they could respond. This scene repeated across the entire planet. Everywhere the aliens landed, they found the same thing: empty cities, hidden traps, enemies that struck and vanished like ghosts. General Cole commanded the North American resistance from a bunker deep beneath the ruins of Denver. The city above had been destroyed in the first orbital bombardment, but the tunnels underneath survived. And those tunnels connected to thousands of miles of underground passages that humans had built in their 72 hours of preparation. "Status report," Cole said to his officers. Colonel checked her tablet. "We have confirmed contact across all sectors. Enemy casualties are significant. They have taken no major objectives." "What about our losses?" "Heavy, sir, but within acceptable parameters." She paused. "The enemy is confused. They do not understand why we are not surrendering." Cole nodded. "That confusion is our greatest weapon. They have never faced guerrilla warfare. They have never fought an enemy that hides, that strikes from shadows, that refuses to stand and fight in neat formations." He pulled up a map showing enemy positions across North America. "They want to occupy our cities. Fine. Let them have the cities. Cities are just buildings. What they cannot occupy is us. 8 billion people who know every inch of this planet. 8 billion people who would rather die than submit." The weeks turned into months, and they learned what human resistance truly meant. Private Amy Santos had been a college student before the invasion. She had studied biology and dreamed of becoming a doctor. Now she led a squad of 12 fighters through the ruins of Chicago, hunting aliens. She had stopped counting her kills weeks ago. It did not matter anymore. What mattered was the mission: hit them, hurt them, disappear, repeat. "Contact," her spotter whispered through the radio. "Patrol, 12 soldiers, 2 blocks north." Amy signaled her squad to take positions. They had done this hundreds of times. It was almost routine now. The fear she had felt in the early days was gone, replaced by cold focus. The ambush was perfect. Homemade explosives channeled the patrol into a narrow street. Snipers took out the officers first, the ones with the armor. Then the close combat began. Amy fired her weapon until it was empty, then pulled her knife. They were stronger than humans. Their armor was better, but they had never learned to fight dirty. They did not expect an enemy who would bite, claw, and stab at weak points in their armor. They did not understand why a wounded human would detonate a grenade rather than surrender. When the fight was over, Amy stood among 12 dead aliens. She had lost 2 of her squad members. The math was bad, but it was math the resistance could afford. There were far more humans then. She collected weapons and ammunition from the bodies, then led her surviving squad back into the tunnels. Tomorrow, they would do it again. High Commander received weekly reports from the surface. Each one was worse than the last. "We have lost 100,000 soldiers," his ground commander reported via hologram. "We control no major population centers. The humans attack constantly. They use weapons and tactics we have never seen before." "What kind of weapons?" demanded. "Chemical agents that burn through our armor. Biological weapons designed specifically to target physiology. Sonic devices that disrupt our communications. And," the commander hesitated. "And what?" "And themselves, High Commander. They strap explosives to their bodies and run into our formations. They crash vehicles into our positions. They seal themselves in buildings with our soldiers and detonate everything. They treat their own lives as weapons." Did not understand, but they value their lives. All species value their lives. "They do, High Commander, but they seem to value something else more. They call it freedom. They would rather die than live under our rule." His advisor, a scholar who had been studying human history, stepped forward. "I have been researching their past. These creatures are unlike anything we have encountered. Their history is filled with wars. Thousands of them. They have spent their entire existence developing new ways to kill each other. So they are primitive savages." "No, High Commander, they are something much more dangerous." The scholar pulled up data on his screen. "When threatened with extinction, most species surrender to preserve themselves. Humans do not. They have a concept called total war. It means that when their survival is threatened, their entire population becomes the army. Children make weapons. Elderly people gather intelligence. Every single person fights in whatever way they can." "That is madness." "Perhaps, but it is effective. We estimated this conquest would take 3 months. We are now in month 6, and we have not achieved a single major objective." On the surface, the war continued. Human losses were high, but the resistance showed no signs of weakening. For every fighter who died, 2 more seemed to take their place. They used every dirty trick in the book, and when the book ran out, they invented new ones. They began to hesitate before entering buildings. They learned to fear quiet streets. They stopped sleeping soundly because humans had a habit of attacking at night. General Cole watched the enemy casualty numbers climb and allowed himself a small smile. They were still losing. They were still and outmatched, but they were making the pay for every inch of ground. "Sir," Colonel said, "the science teams report progress on the SHIELD project." Cole looked up. "How much progress?" "Significant. They believe they can have something ready within 3 months, something that will change the balance of this war." Cole nodded slowly. 3 more months of hell, 3 more months of watching his people die. But at the end of it, maybe, just maybe, they would have a chance. "Tell them to work faster," he said. "And tell our fighters to keep the pressure on. We need to buy time for whatever they are building." The message went out to resistance cells across the planet. "Hold on. Help is coming. Keep fighting." And humanity did what it did best. It kept fighting. 9 months into the war, something changed. The human resistance, which should have been ground into dust by now, began pushing back, not just defending anymore, attacking. It started small. A supply depot destroyed here, a communications tower sabotaged there. But then the attacks grew larger and bolder. They suddenly found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to grow stronger with every passing week. Lieutenant Commander Daniel Hayes was a Navy officer who had survived the orbital battle. His ship had been destroyed, but he had made it to an escape pod. Now he commanded something far more important than a ship. He commanded the first human assault force trained to attack orbital stations. His team consisted of 50 Marines, all volunteers who knew the mission was almost certainly suicide. They had trained for 3 months in captured alien armor, learning how it worked, how to move in it, how to fight in it. They had studied the layout of stations from intelligence gathered by resistance spies. Now they floated in a stolen alien shuttle, approaching their target, a major orbital platform that coordinated enemy operations across half the planet. 30 seconds to contact, the pilot reported. Hayes checked his weapon one more time. It was a human rifle modified to fire rounds that could penetrate armor. Human ingenuity at its finest. Take what the enemy has, figure out how it works, make it better. Remember the mission, Hayes said to his team. We get to the reactor core, we plant the charges, we get out if we can. If we cannot get out, we make sure those charges go off anyway. The shuttle docked with the station. The airlock opened, and 50 humans poured into the enemy's stronghold. The fighting was brutal. Security forces were well trained and well armed, but they had never faced an enemy inside their own station. They had never fought in close quarters against humans who had nothing to lose. Hayes led his team through corridor after corridor, leaving dead aliens in their wake. His own people fell too. 20 became 15. 15 became 10. 10 became 7. But they reached the reactor core. Plant the charges, Hayes ordered. Blood dripped from a wound on his arm. He ignored it. And make sure we broadcast this on every frequency. I want every in this system to see what humans can do. The charges were set. The surviving team members fell back toward the shuttle. 3 more died covering the retreat. Hayes was the last one out. He sealed the airlock behind him and hit the detonation switch. The explosion was visible from Earth's surface. A new star appeared in the sky for a brief moment, then faded. The orbital platform was gone, along with over 2,000 alien crew members. It was the first time in 12,000 years that anyone had destroyed a major military installation. Hayes and 4 surviving team members made it back to Earth as heroes, but more importantly, their mission sent a message. Humanity could hit back. Humanity could hurt the invaders in ways they had never imagined. And it was just the beginning. On the ground, the tide was turning even faster. Human scientists working in underground labs had been busy during the months of resistance. They had captured equipment, dissected it, studied it, and learned its secrets. Doctor was a who had been captured in the early days of the war. They had forced her to work in their research facility, studying human biology so they could better control their future slaves. What they did not know was that was studying them right back. For 9 months, she had been gathering data, stealing access codes, and passing information to the resistance through hidden channels. Now she stood before High Commander himself, in a meeting about the war's progress. She had been summoned to explain human resilience. Why do they not break? Demanded. We have killed millions of them. We control the skis. We have superior technology in every way. Why do they keep fighting? Looked at the alien commander. She had waited months for this moment. She had known it would be her last day alive, but she had made her peace with that. You never understood us, she said calmly. You looked at our planet and saw our wars, our conflicts, our divisions. You thought that made us weak. You were wrong. His mandibles clicked with anger. Explain. Those conflicts made us strong. Every war we fought taught us something. Every defeat made us more resilient. We did not have the luxury of easy conquests. We had to fight for everything, against the environment, against disease, against each other. We evolved to be survivors. She smiled. And then you came along. You united us. For the first time in our history, every human on Earth is working toward the same goal. You gave us a common enemy, something we have never had before. She reached into her pocket. Guards raised their weapons. You should have done your research, High Commander. She pulled out a small device. Humanity is never more dangerous than when we are cornered. The device was a transmitter. It broadcast a signal to every resistance cell on the planet. Attached to that signal were the access codes to the command network. Had spent 9 months stealing those codes, piece by piece. Guards shot her before she could say another word, but it did not matter. The transmission was complete. Within hours, the human resistance had complete intelligence on every position on the planet. They knew troop numbers, supply routes, communication frequencies, and command structures. They knew everything. Within days, the counteroffensive began. Human forces attacked with precision they had never shown before. They knew exactly where the enemy was weak. They knew exactly when reinforcements would arrive. They knew exactly how to disrupt enemy communications. They found themselves blind, deaf, and confused. Their perfectly organized military machine fell into chaos. General Cole watched the battle reports come in from his bunker. For the first time since the war began, he felt something like hope. "Sir," Colonel reported, "the new weapons are ready." Cole nodded. The science teams had done it. They had figured out how shields worked, and more importantly, they had figured out how to break them. "Distribute them to all units," Cole ordered, "and send this message to every resistance cell on Earth." He typed the message himself, knowing it would be heard by billions of people. "Today we take back our world. Today we show the universe what humanity can do. Today we make them afraid of us." The humans attacked at dawn, across every continent, in a coordinated assault that they never saw coming. And for the first time, when they fired their weapons, soldiers fell. The shields that had protected them were useless now. Human weapons tore through their armor like paper. The advantage they had enjoyed for 9 months evaporated in a single day. Private Amy Santos led her squad into what had been a stronghold. The enemy was retreating, actually retreating, for the first time in the war. She stood on the rubble of a building where she had lost friends, and she raised her fist to the sky. "This is our planet," she shouted, "and we are taking it back." Across Earth, humans heard her words and echoed them. A cry of defiance that had been building for 9 months finally found its voice. The turning point had come. And now the real fight could begin. 1 year after the invasion began, the last soldier on Earth surrendered. He was a young officer, barely more than a recruit, and he had watched his entire unit die around him. When the human fighters surrounded his position, he dropped his weapon and raised his hands. Private Amy Santos was there to accept his surrender. She looked at the alien who had come to enslave her people and felt something unexpected. Not hatred, not anger, just exhaustion. The war had been long and terrible, and she was tired. "Take him to the processing center," she told her squad. "He will be treated according to the rules of war." Because that was who humans were. They fought like demons when threatened, but they did not become monsters. The occupation that was supposed to last generations had become the worst military disaster in history. They had landed 500,000 soldiers on Earth. Fewer than 20,000 made it off the planet alive. High Commander was not among them. He had died 3 months earlier when human forces assaulted his command ship in orbit. They had used captured vessels to get close, then boarded the massive flagship with 10,000 Marines. The battle had lasted 6 hours, had fought until the end, refusing to surrender, still unable to understand how everything had gone so wrong. His last words, recorded by his surviving staff, were a question. How? How did they do this? On Earth, the question was not how. The question was what next. Admiral stood before the United Earth Council, the governing body that had formed during the war. Leaders from every nation sat before him, their faces marked by the scars of the past year. "The war is over," said. "We won, but we are not safe." He activated the holographic display behind him. It showed not Earth, but a distant star system. "This is the home system. They came from there with 2,000 ships to conquer us. They have 10,000 more ships in their fleet. They rule 300 star systems. And right now, they are deciding whether to send another invasion force." The room was silent. "We cannot wait for them to come back," continued. "We cannot spend years rebuilding while they prepare a larger attack. We have to act now while they are confused and afraid. We have to show them, and every other species in this galaxy, that attacking Earth has consequences." General Cole stepped forward. He had led the ground resistance. He had lost friends, soldiers, and nearly his own life. Now he had a new mission. "During the occupation, we captured their ships. We studied their technology. We improved it." He smiled grimly. "We have been building a fleet, not a defense fleet, an attack fleet." The display changed to show rows of warships. They were not crude, converted cargo ships anymore. They were real warships, built using a combination of human engineering and technology. 3,000 of them. "We are going to their home," Cole said. "We are going to show them what they started." Commander Lisa Turner had died in the first battle, but her sacrifice had not been forgotten. Her name was painted on the side of the flagship, a massive vessel called the Defiance. It was 3 times the size of anything humans had ever built, and it was just the beginning. The journey to space took 4 months. The human fleet traveled in silence, their crews preparing for what was to come. When they arrived, they found something unexpected. The home system was in chaos. Word of the disaster at Earth had spread through the Dominion. Subject species, races that had been conquered and enslaved for thousands of years, were rising up everywhere. The empire that had ruled the stars for so long was cracking apart. High Commander's replacement, a veteran named, watched the human fleet appear on his sensors with something very close to despair. He had warned the Council that attacking Earth was a mistake. They had not listened. Now 3,000 alien warships hung in the sky above his, their weapons trained on every major city. "What do they want?" asked his advisor. "They have not attacked yet, High Commander. They are just waiting." Then a transmission came through. A human female appeared on the screen, recognized her from intelligence reports. Ambassador Bishop, the woman who had laughed at the original ultimatum. She was not laughing now. Her face was cold and hard. "You came to Earth seeking slaves," she said. "You found something else. You found a species that has spent its entire existence fighting, surviving, and adapting. You found creatures who turn tragedy into strength, who become more dangerous with every wound, who never, ever surrender." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Your empire is vast, your technology is impressive, but you made one mistake that cannot be undone. You showed us that there are others out there who would harm us. You united us, and now we are coming." Her voice hardened. "Not to conquer, not to enslave. We are not like you, but we are going to make absolutely certain that no one ever threatens our world again. The Dominion is finished. Your subject species will be freed. Your military will be dismantled, and your name will become a warning to every civilization in this galaxy." She smiled, and it was not a kind expression. "Congratulations. You declared war on the deadliest species in the galaxy, and we do not lose." The surrender came 3 days later. They had no choice. Their fleet was shattered, their empire collapsing, their subject races in open revolt. The species that had ruled for 12,000 years had been broken by a race they had dismissed as primitive. The terms were harsh but fair. The dominion would dissolve. The conquered species would go free. The military would be reduced to a small defense force, and they would pay reparations to Earth for the next century. 50 years later, humanity had spread across 100 star systems. The former territories were now independent civilizations, many of them allied with Earth. The galaxy had learned a simple truth that they discovered too late. Humans were not the strongest species. They were not the most advanced. They were not the most numerous. But they were the most stubborn, the most adaptable, and the most relentlessly creative when it came to survival. On Earth, a monument stood in what had once been New York City. It listed the names of the 60 million who had died in the war. At its base, carved in 100 languages both human and alien, were the words that had become humanity's motto among the stars. We came in peace, we left in pieces, we returned in force. Admiral, now an old man, visited the monument every year on the anniversary of the invasion. He would stand before the names of the fallen, including Commander Lisa Turner, Doctor, and thousands of others he had known personally. "We did it," he would whisper. "We showed them who we are." And high above, ships carrying humans traveled between the stars, exploring, building, and making sure that no one would ever threaten their home again. The galaxy had learned to respect those strange creatures from the small blue planet. And humanity had finally found its place among the stars. Not as conquerors, not as victims, but as survivors, as they had always been.